Okay, so let's have a look at the HTC One itself. It's obviously come in a small little piece of sort of plastic there, just to keep the thing from getting scratched and make sure it's all nice and shiny. Ta-da! There we go. Now, the first instant thing that I notice is these tapered edges are far superior to the previous HTC One. That actually has a really nice feel in the hand. I quite liked the HTC One from last year, but the edges could feel a little bit kind of grating on these parts of your hand here. This has a very good in the hand feel. It feels very similar to the Galaxy S4 with its tapered edges. Very, very nice. Now, the most important task, let me see if we can do this, is the finger balance. Now, if we get this device near enough in its center, we should be able to find the pivot point. There we are. So what we can see here, this is actually a couple of inches off the ground, but that is your kind of balance point on this device. And it's actually very nicely balanced. If you notice, I'm able to lift it up and down, and it isn't really moving around too much. If I try that on the side of my finger, I should be able to get a similar kind of result from it. Again, a little bit more wobbly, but that is pretty well balanced, I would say. The original HTC One always felt like it had just a slight amount of kind of top heaviness on it, so it was sometimes kind of tip more. That does feel nice. So just going round the device, as it were, let's just pop that down on the table. One of the key things that we obviously have on the HTC range of devices is the boom sound, which is denoted by these two speakers. On the original HTC One, it gave incredible sound. We will be checking to see how well that stacks up on the new device. What we also have on the front is the front-facing selfie camera, as I think we can now well and truly dub front-facing cameras. It is a 5-megapixel shooter, which is a bit of an interesting one, really. Traditionally, we normally would have maybe 2 or 3 megapixels or less. Here we have a 5-megapixel normal style shooter, so not ultra pixels, just 5 megapixel. It's a standard kind of camera. The display is now a 5-inch display, and it's pretty much edge to edge. You can see a small amount of bordering here, but not a huge amount. On the bottom, this is where our standard kind of jacks are concerned. We have our mini USB, or micro USB, whichever way you want to call it, and a headphone jack. On the top, we have a power button, and that's about our lot. Taking a look at the front of the HTC One M8, one of the key things that we can obviously notice is the speaker grille, very similar to the HTC One from last year. It is boom sound, which means it's got lots of front-facing sound, unlike most mobile phones and smartphones which have their speakers either on the bottom or the back, which ultimately means that the sound isn't really facing you. In the HTC One from last year, it was most definitely a standout feature. Interestingly, the front-facing camera is now a 5-megapixel shooter, which is interesting because effectively using ultra pixels for the back cameras, that really only tops out at the equivalent of around 4 megapixel. So in theory, you will get a slightly bigger quality of image, such a larger image, from the front-facing camera than you will from the back, although evidently the front-facing camera is not going to give you as good a quality of image, less light being able to come in. Now, on the bottom we have our standard USB jack and the headphone jack on there, so charging and audio. On the top is our power button, and on the sides we have 2 trapdoors which are used for the SIM and for the MicroSD card. Excellent thing here, 32 gig is your storage, but you can expand it through MicroSD, thankfully. Nothing worse than having a top-end smartphone that's brilliant for media and not being able to actually get all of your media you want to play onto it. Now, on the back, things haven't really changed a right lot from the HTC One 2013. The major changes really are dual cameras and the dual LED flash, which I don't believe dual LED flash was on the previous HTC One. Might have to double check that actually. And also we've got some noise cancelling microphone point there, I believe, as well. Now, the really interesting thing with the camera array they've gone for on the HTC One M8 is this dual camera setup. Now, we will be testing this in more detail and giving you some footage from that as well. But ultimately, the way this works is this is your primary camera here, and this takes your actual photograph. But this top camera is actually measuring the depth of the image as it's being taken. So what you can then do is change the focus on the camera after you've taken the picture. So effectively you can take the picture, take your picture, a nice scene, maybe two people stood next to each other or one person stood slightly into the background, and then afterwards you can kind of recompose the shot by making the foreground blurry and the background sharp and vice versa. And all of that is achieved by this ability to have depth information generated from this second camera. This could well be a watershed moment in smartphone camera design. A very clever idea and something that's very similar to a technology called Litro, which was kind of come up with a few years ago. Very interesting to see how this kind of works out. Now, the HTC logo, it's slightly bumpy. It kind of is sort of embossed into this metal. And it feels a little rough, but it's not unpleasant. Let's see how that kind of affects my in the hand. You can feel a slight roughness to it, but it's not getting in my way, it's not catching on my hands or anything. You can just feel it's there. In many respects, that might actually help to find the center point of the device for grip, but we'll see. Honestly, it's just a little affectation really, isn't it? It's just something to say, hey, mine's a HTC. But anyway, one thing I do really like though is these tapered edges are gorgeous. The more I hold it in my hand, the more I kind of feel, wow, that is comfy. Even with that extra weight and the kind of size increase from the 4.7-inch screen, I think it was on the previous one, up to a 5-inch screen now, and it's actually grown by around 1 centimetre top and bottom, or overall from the height, and a couple of millimetres on the width. But it feels good. It doesn't feel, this isn't kind of like holding a Note 2 or a Note 3 for the first time where you're kind of like going, oh, my hand has expanded. This feels good. And the weight and the distribution, again, feels really nice. For watching, we hope you enjoyed this video. Do please remember to like and comment, and if you'd like to, please subscribe. You can also visit our website and download our Android app. If you do subscribe, you'll be getting a daily dose of the latest tech news, hardware reviews, Android games, consoles, and basically an honest opinion direct from the UK. Stay tuned, stay Androidizen.